Humbly use your spiritual gifts. Don't think too highly of yourself. For I say, through the grace given to me to everyone who is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think. Romans 12:3. Spiritual gifts from God are wonderful privileges. They come with huge responsibilities. We can easily be snared by pride over these gifts. Power and importance breed trouble when you let God's gifts go to your head. God gives everyone a spiritual gift of some type. The Apostle Paul provided 3 lists of spiritual gifts. 1 Corinthians 12, 1 through 31, Romans 12, 3 through 8, and Ephesians 4:11. Paul emphasized the fact that all these gifts come from the same Spirit, and we should use our spiritual gifts according to our faith. Spiritual gifts can be misused. Paul was very upset to learn that the Corinthians were misusing their spiritual gifts. They were destroying the church instead of building it. 1 Corinthians 3:3 and then verses 16 and 17. God's gifts are meant to be used in unison with the community of believers. We all work together and benefit one another harmoniously. We are part of the body of Christ, His church. We are the church individually and collectively, simple yet profound. All driven by the same Spirit. No one should think too highly of himself, especially in this area. Don't give the devil and yourself a foothold. Be careful that you don't get lulled into valuing yourself too much because you are doing great things for God. The opposite should occur. It is with great humility and reverent fear that we use the gifts that God has given us. We hear too often about leaders, apostles, disciples, teachers, pastors, preachers, prophets, and everyday saints falling. They let their pride pull them away from God. They trip over their importance and pierce themselves and others with many griefs. It's very sad. The gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. Romans 11:29. But He can take you out of commission for thinking too highly of yourself and misusing your gifts. How are you using your spiritual gifts? I pray that you are serving God and His church mightily with them. Have you thought too highly of yourself lately in this area? Pride creeps up on the most devout believer. Have you begun to feel so good about your gifts of ministry, leadership, wisdom, knowledge, teaching, discernment, tongues, or prophecies that you love them more than God? Have they gone to your head? I pray not. Walk humbly in the reverent, respectful fear of God for bestowing these wonderful gifts on you. Don't let the devil or the self deceive you. Don't feel superior and lord your gift over other Christians. No gift is better than the other. Don't feel too important. Remain faithful to God in your calling today. Persevere with God's love and joy in using your spiritual gifts to serve others. Use them in proportion to your faith in God. Help your brother or sister caught in thinking too highly of themselves over their spiritual gifts before they plummet, before they tear down the body of believers. Love people into loving God with your spiritual gifts today. But to think soberly, as God has dealt to each one a measure of faith. Romans 12:5.